Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me now. I can hear me too. I'm here today to show some really neat stuff. It's that fabled feature, the Microsoft Personal Assistant 2014 Service Pack 2 from Cortana. So if you're here to see Cortana, great. We're going to learn how you can all take your applications and integrate them into the Windows Phone speech and natural language experience. I am Rob Chambers. I'm here today with Avery Bishop from my team and Paul Beck from Hulu. Today, you're going to learn about what we've provided to you. We're going to walk you through it step by step, see what Cortana looks like, what it looks like when apps are integrated. We'll go over some, not just the science of the technicalities of how to do it, but also the more subtle points about what to think about. Paul will then be able to share from his perspective what he learned by integrating with Cortana with the Hulu Plus application. So with that, let's just jump right in and get started. Overall, we're going to learn about the things you can do, how Cortana actually works with the apps, and what you can do to plug in, and some questions at the end. When I think about what Cortana is capable of doing, both in the built-in feature set as well as what developers such as yourselves could do, it breaks down into a few different categories. I think Cortana is very good at communicating, very good at helping users remember things, and very good at finding things. Specifically, when we're thinking about people or places or calendar or other time-based events, as well as just information. That information may be world information, or it might be information that's very specific to that user or personal. You can communicate with people, the world. You can remember things about places or things to remember to tell people. You can remember appointments. You can find appointments, etc. So if your application is in any way represented here in terms of you're good at communicating to the world, you can help the user remember things now or do things in the future, you can find items, or if you integrate with people, type concepts, or places, etc., your app is a very good candidate for inclusion into the Cortana experience. So with that, let's look at what Cortana can actually do. If you were to say, Cortana, what can I do? What can you do? What can I say? Things of that nature. This experience comes up. You can also click the See More link in the middle of the screen to learn more about the built-in capabilities. And in the demo in a few moments, you'll see that if you scroll down, you can see all the applications that are available that have integrated and the capabilities they have. But let's look at each of the capabilities that are built in. So for the phone, you can do things like call people by their real names, some nicknames. You can text with them. So here, both of these they meet that pattern of communicating with users. This is similar to the Skype example too. So you have the built-in capabilities as well as the other applications you can plug into the system to communicate with people. This is also where Facebook and Twitter might fit in terms of connecting with humans or seeing what they're up to, or posting information out onto the world's feed of Twitter feeds. Calendar information, this is really one of the places it shines, where I have this huge calendar of information, and I might want to move things around in that real personal digital assistant sort of style. I don't remember when my dentist appointment is. I can go find it. I can create new items. I can move them around and change them. Reminders, sort of a fundamental concept in Cortana where I can do place-based reminders, I can do time-based reminders, and I can do people-based reminders. So the people-based reminders especially make me better at being a good friend or a good family member. I can remember to talk to my brother about the promotion he just got the next time we talk, or I can remember to apologize for my wife for being gone for so very, very long at the Build conference, things like that. Notes, just unstructured information. I can keep track of where I parked my car. I can keep track of, I can begin grocery lists or other items, unstructured. Lots of information to help me remember what's going on. Alarms, similar to the calendar-based stuff, but in a more alarm type way, where at night I can just say, Cortana, set my alarm for 7 o'clock, then set it for 7:05, and then 7:10, because I can't get up in the morning. Music, vast repository of music, both that I have on my device as well as my Xbox Music Pass collection that I've synced in the cloud. I can access all of that. I can play artists. I can play albums. I can look for specific songs, etc. I also have transport control like play stop, etc. Places. This is a very good feature of Cortana where I can find a place to eat. I can find if I need to go find a Best Buy because I forgot a dongle for my laptop. I can see where the closest one is. I can see if they're open right now. I can get directions to them, things of that nature. Very, very easy to use as a user, walking you through this experience. And then at the end of this, it's search. We are powered by the Bing platform for many of the things that are listed here above. But in the end, you can find anything that Cortana knows about the world, and she knows everything that Bing knows. You can get weather reports. You can find a good place to, the forecast. You can, all kinds of crazy things, news, events, etc. As I said, all of this is powered by Bing. And additionally, one of the features that Windows Phone and Bing allow is for your application to plug right into this experience. This is a fundamentally different approach than I think others have taken in the past, where we're not picking one single company to say, hey, this is the company we're going to work with to do this particular feature. It's any of you, any of the people that hear this on the broadcast today, you can go back to, when you get the SDK and you download it, you can build a new app, you can extend your existing Silverlight app, build your new Universal app running on Windows Phone to take advantage of these capabilities. So we asked our team what they thought about applications, what are their favorite apps, and what would they like to see come out of integration. These are real people that worked on the real team. We thought it'd be fun to sort of have them have a presence and share their perspective. Let me flip over to that.
Are you rolling?
It's like, so Baconit is my favorite app.
I use MyFitnessPal to track my diet.
The Amazon Kindle app, I love reading ebooks.
My favorite app is Wine Steward.
I use Mint a lot.
Oh, that would be really cool.
I'd really like to be able to say things like, Mint, find me my gas expenditures for March.
I think it would be really neat if I could call Wine Steward and say, Wine Steward, what should I drink from my cellar tonight?
MyFitnessPal, add 4 ounces of chicken to my lunch.
Hey, Baconit, show me the most popular article on the front page, right? And just take me right there.
Kindle, show me the latest sci-fi books. And it would just take me to the marketplace and find some new stuff for me.
So we now have the opportunity to allow all of the applications in the Windows Phone Marketplace to extend the Cortana experience. So I thought I'd actually take some time and show you some of the apps that we have been working with, give you a little bit more taste of that than you were able to see in the keynote today, and then we'll jump into how you actually do that as developers. So back to the slides. Oh, let's do it this way. Here we go. So I'm going to project my screen here onto my display. A nifty projection capability. Bam, there's my screen. So you can see my Windows Phone 8.1 operating system. I've got using some of the new features of that new background for the home screen. I've got my personal content here. I launch Cortana, and I can see she's responsive. She's waiting there for me to do something. This link in the center of the screen, see more, I'll go ahead and click that. Here are all those basic capabilities. And we decided that we're not just going to let this happen for the built-in features, but users will go here to learn about what they can do with the capabilities of the phone, and they can scroll down and see all the applications that are installed. And so one of those applications I'm going to start off with is one that we didn't talk about today. It's MSDN Voice Search. So you're all developers, you're all sitting here, you're learning a bunch of new things, you're going to go home, you're going to look up information. I don't know about you, but sometimes I find myself in the oddest place thinking, how does that actual function work while I'm waiting in line trying to think about a new programming problem that I'm doing? So we built this application. We're going to put it in the store. We're going to give the source code out to all of you so you understand how to integrate into Cortana, both into Cortana as well as speech in the app. So if I click on that, you can see the kinds of things you can do. And I'll give you some great examples. Back here at Cortana. MSDN, how do I reverse a linked list?
Starting MSDN.
We recognize all the text. We launched this new application. It's a simple app. We built it in 2 or 3 days or so. We hosted the browser control in it, so we're just doing the search on the MSDN site. And sure enough, right there at the top of the screen, you can learn about how to reverse a linked list. This works for sort of any kind of task you want to do with MSDN. So now once we're in the app, I'm still in the app. I've got a UI metaphor down here at the bottom that we show you how to use if you'd like. You can go ahead and continue searches. You can edit the search. You can talk to the app directly inside of it for things like Windows Phone Voice Commands XML Schema.
Searching for Windows Phone Voice Commands XML Schema.
It doesn't have to be natural language. It can be anything. So the user gets to pick, do they want to interact naturally? Do they want to interact with keywords? The power of the system will do the right thing. That first link there is the documentation from last year's version. The new documentation will be up shortly. But if you click through, you can learn about this XML schema that I'll show in a moment about how you can configure your applications. All of this works both with speech and with text. So if I were to go back to Cortana, you can see that down here, just like Joe showed he could create reminders and other things using text, I can use this to use MSDN. Now, this isn't as powerful because we're just hosting the browser control, but imagine you had a really rich application that had a great experience for searching, and I'll show that with these other apps in just a moment. But I can just type in here, MSDN, malloc, maybe I forgot how to use allocation on C. Click that. The application launches. It's not talking back to me because I didn't talk to it. The app is choosing to honor my choice. And there it is if I'd forgot somehow to use the malloc function. All right, so that's malloc. Now if I go back and see the other applications that are real applications, not this toy that we've built for you with downloadable source code, we've got Facebook, we've got Flixster, we've got Hulu+, we've got Skype, and we've got Twitter. And I'll show each one of those. So with Facebook, what we've done is allow you to quickly get to a particular user. Now in the keynote, you saw that Joe went to Terry's page and saw a funny video from Jimmy Fallon. But I want to show you some of the subtle aspects of the system that might be lost if you don't look at them carefully. So I'm going to do a Facebook search for somebody, which I only have one. It's going to find it, and we'll see what that looks like. Facebook, what's up with Rick Chambers? That's my brother, Rick. It's going to pop open. Hopefully he hasn't posted anything embarrassing. I haven't checked in about 15 minutes. We'll see. Facebook communicates what's actually going on, speaks out loud, finds Rick Chambers, and then, draw bug. There it is, right there. Went right to the page, right to the content. Now, what if I were to search for something where there was some ambiguity? You saw if I were searching for a Mexican restaurant and there was like 7 of them, I'd see a list. What if I'm in a Facebook experience or using Facebook and there are multiple people? Let's take a look at that. Facebook, what's up with Rick? I got a bunch of Ricks. We've got my brother, got several friends. It's going to come in, it's going to load, look up Rick, notice that there's more than one of them, drop you into the default Facebook search experience so that I can actually edit it or continue or select from the list using the power of the application, this nice blend between the power of the app and the ability to jump directly into the experience. So maybe Rick Levinson, see what he's up to. All right, so that's Facebook, communicating with the world, communicating with my friends, seeing what they're up to. Also, we have in here Flixster. Let's take a look at Flixster. Flixster, what time does Divergent start?
Searching for Divergent showtimes. Got it.
So you see what happened there is it went in, it showed you that it was searching, the user had confidence that the right thing was happening. It found one of them, so it went ahead and went to the details page, knew it was showtime, slid over and showed you the showtime. If I wanted to scroll back, I can see the information about the movie. I can press back once, I can see the list of them, but there was only one, so the app did a smart thing because there was only one. What if there were more than one? Let's see what that looks like. Flixster, what time does The Hunger Games start? No.
Searching for The Hunger Games showtimes.
So I could say many different things. I'm just picking that as an example. I could say find or show me or anything the app wants to support in terms of the natural language interface. Now here, there was no exact match. There are multiple of them, so the user's in charge. They get to actually modify the query, see which one they want, pick the right one, and jump in. All right, so that's pretty cool. Maybe I'll take a look at that. But a real world thing happened to me the other day. I was sitting in my house. I was working on build slides of all things, imagine. And my kids were watching a TV show that I really enjoy watching with them. But I wasn't going to get to watch it with them. So I was like, oh, man. And I was like, aha, I'll use Hulu to add that to my queue. So in the same kind of way I'll show you this, I added that particular show. Go back to Cortana. Real quick, I'm on the go. I want to add a show so I can watch it later. Hulu, add Deadbeat to my queue.
Opening Hulu Plus.
Hulu opens up. We'll get to hear from
All right.
Paul a little bit later how he did this.
Queue.
Deadbeat's in my queue. There it is, ready to go for me later when I want to use it. Now again, back to this, keeping the user in control. They can make their own choices if they're using speech or text, using built-in capabilities or the applications that they love, or using natural language or keywords. Let's take a look at this. So I also have some favorites in Hulu. So I can just use keywords and I can say Hulu favorites, right? I don't have to go on my start screen, find where the Hulu app is, it loads up, then navigate over to the right place. I can just simply and easily say Hulu favorites. I didn't say it to it. It doesn't talk back to me. There's all my favorites. So imagine the power that you have in your applications that have large content that you can just jump right into the right place. You can even get an action to happen. There's an amazing set of possibilities. A couple more examples. We've got Skype. This is a good one. So with Skype, you can talk naturally to it. You can use the contact names or people that you may be wanting to search for. This is an interesting one because we're doing recognition for all of these, both partially on the device and partially in the cloud. And the two recognition systems are in constant communication to make sure that the best thing happens. If it's a large phrase, the cloud does more work. If it's personalized content, the device may do more work. The app name itself, because it's installed on the device, is on the client side actual recognition. And back and forth and back and forth. You can see that as the text shows up down at the bottom. Those are results coming down from the cloud. But then as the system makes the decision which one to take, the text is usually finalized and then taking you into the right experience. So let's take a look at what that looks like for Skype. Skype, I want to talk to Travis Wilson on screen.
Starting Skype.
Now, Travis is one of the devs that helped build this platform, and he's here today. Hopefully, he'll actually answer the phone. We'll see. Travis. Network, come on, let's go network. This isn't Cortana. I thought I had a 5G network here. It's trying. Hey, Travis, can you hear me? Travis? Well, apparently the internet is conspiring against us. But you can see part of Travis's head. He is out there. I'd also like to wish Travis a happy birthday. This is his birthday. So not only was he born on this day, so too was Cortana. All right, what else we got going on in here? We've got Twitter. Now, in the example that you saw on stage with David in front of his 5,000 closest friends, the hashtag didn't quite work out, but I wanted to show you that it really does work, and it works very, very well. Twitter, new tweet, I love the Seattle Sounders, hashtag Seattle Sounders, hashtag I hate standing in the rain, which is a bit of a problem because I live in Seattle. Up comes Twitter. It's all formatted nicely. It's ready to go. I can just touch a couple things if I need to edit or add anything, but I'm ready to go. All right. So those are all the applications we have here. My hope is over the next section, you'll all learn how you can add your app's capabilities to that list and make the user experience so much better on Windows Phone and for Cortana, letting the user be in control. All right, we'll switch back over to the slides. All right. Did that intro, did the demo. All right, so Cortana, like I've said a couple of times, Cortana does let you as the user interact on your terms. Speech recognition, text input, natural language, keywords, built-in features, or the applications that you've downloaded onto your phone, the applications that you here in this audience and online are building. You can integrate with Cortana in 3 easy steps. This is a bit of an extension to what we've done in the past, but yet it's also oh so revolutionary and easy. First step is you're going to create a voice command definition. It's sort of a specification of what your app would like to have given to it. And it could be as simple as, this is my app name and I want all the words that come afterwards, or it could be more complicated than that. Your app, when you first run it, you would register that voice command definition file with the system. So then in future runs, when people are using Cortana either with text or with speech, if they announce to your application that you should do something, it will. Now, a bit on that, if you think about this, we're modeling Cortana on a human-to-human interaction pattern. It's a personal assistant. It should behave like a personal assistant. It has a notebook, and it keeps track of things about its user in a very transparent way, but only to that user. In a similar way, you know, as I look around the audience and I look at each individual, some of you are watching the presentation, some of you are not. I don't know all of your names, but if I wanted to call on one of you and get your attention, if you're not listening, I would say your name out loud. It's a very common human-to-human behavior. So we've modeled this system in the same way. You're looking at Cortana. Cortana's looking back at you. You can interact with Cortana. But if you want to have Cortana help you get to another app, you announce the app that you'd like to listen for. And then it gets the rest of the behavior. There's a really funny story about 5 or 6 years ago, even 7, I'm getting old now. We're in my house. My kids and I are watching TV. Apparently we watch a lot of TV. And record stuff on TiVo. My TiVo remote control batteries died. And the kids were devastated because they couldn't watch the show that they wanted to watch. And so I was like, no problem, no problem. I've been working on this other cool stuff, and I've got this network protocol that I was working out on how to talk to my TiVo and get it to do the right things. So I was like, great, kids, hold on. I brought out my laptop. It was a little bit clunky because it's a laptop. And I'm talking to it, and I'm telling it, you know, like, TiVo, up, 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 through the scroll, like not the best natural interface. But it worked. And the kids were listening to me interact with that system. The show was over. Everybody was happy. The remote control was still dead. My son, who was about 7 years old at the time, he walks over to the bonus room doors who were shut. And he walks up to the doors. He looks back at me. He kind of smiles at me, and he says, door, open. He gets it. He's 7 years old. All users get this. All people get this. It's a human behavior. And so the best way to interact is in this style. So that's what we're offering to all of you. It reinforces your brand. It reinforces what you want to have happen. It's in your app. You're in full control. The user goes to your app to complete the tasks. All right. We're going to dig into each one of these 3 sections. Avery's going to come up in a minute and help me do this. We're going to go back and forth a couple times. First step of creating the voice command. Here is some XML on the screen. Don't worry, it's little, but I'm going to blow it up as needed. The first step is the command prefix. This is your application's name. You already have a name, and it's registered in the system, but my app was called MSDN Voice Search, and that's a mouthful. I don't want to say that all the time. I don't want to type that all the time. It's a nickname. My real name is Robert L. Chambers, but I like people to call me Rob, so this is Rob. The next step is to give an example of the kind of thing you might say to this application. This is included in the built-in user experience that I showed early with that list of items and the applications at the bottom. Every time a user wants to learn about how they can interact with Cortana, this example will show up there. Then there are these logical units of intent, if you will. We call them commands. And these commands will go into detail more. Effectively, it goes over what the user would say to Cortana or type to Cortana, what Cortana would say or print back on the screen in response, and what action Cortana will take. Looking at it individually, there's another example that is about what it is you can say to Cortana. It's not a pattern that we're matching. It's just an example that shows up in the user interface if you clicked into your app, advertised in that way. Then there are a series of these XML elements called listen for elements. Now, in this case, we've given the user sort of a pattern that they can follow. We're saying, hey, the user can just say search, or they can say search for some stuff. And I'll talk a little bit more about how this works, but effectively, instead of having to specify all of the words, we're allowing you to refer to this gigantic cloud grammar that Cortana is using for all of her scenarios. So if you could say it to Cortana and turn it into text, you can say it to your app, turn it into text. All of the advancements we're doing there, we're giving to you as well. In addition to the listen fors, after the user has said it, some feedback back onto the screen or spoken back to the user. In this case, it says, search on MSDN or searching on MSDN. This is both visual and auditory, but it's only auditory if the user spoke to Cortana, because if you typed, it doesn't take it back to you as auditory. I don't want to let everybody in my busy corporate meeting know that I just added something to my Hulu queue, because I think it's the most boring meeting I've ever been in my life. So it'd be bad, not a good thing. Lastly, the action that we want to perform. Today, the only action that we're announcing here is that we can navigate into your application. Now, you can see this is extensible. We could do many other things, but right now, we're just navigating into your application. The target is optional for non-Silverlight applications, but here's where the theme of the conference, one of them is use the investments that you have. If you already have a Silverlight application, still works great with a Silverlight app, jump right into the right page. If you have a new universal app or a new specific, application, it also works for that, and we'll show you examples of that in a few minutes. So those listen fors referred to something. There's like a Mad Lib style pattern. Search for, blank, fill in the blank. The cloud will fill in the blank. Those blanks can be phrase lists, or they can be this new concept called a phrase topic. These phrase topics are very, very powerful. It's anything that we can recognize as text, we'll give it to you. And you can use this just simply by giving us hints. Is this a search kind of experience? Is this a dictation kind of experience? What's the subject? Here I've listed MSDN, but if you're Hulu, you may list movies and TV. If you're Twitter, you might list the word Twitter because it might be a little bit different. And then we will use this to guide accuracy improvements to the system to make the experience better going forward, both for your application and for the system overall. Let's look at how this is compared with what we had in Windows Phone 8.0. In 8.0, we had a speech experience. You couldn't type to it. There was no giant Cortana personal assistant wrapping the whole thing up. It was just speech recognition, and you could do some voice search. As a third-party developer, you had to specify every single word the user would ever say. And so for some little things that would work, but for giant internet scale tasks like trying to access all of the movies that Hulu knows about or all of the original content that is there, or everything that a user may ever say to Twitter, that was in no way possible with what we had. But with the new system, it's very, very simple. You have this sort of Mad Lib style pattern. I sometimes call it a carrier phrase. It carries the intent that the user has and a slot, that underlined sort of Mad Lib style of what's going to be filled in. Very, very simple. That full thing compiles and runs and is more or less what I showed in this demo for the voice command definition file. That helps you go from very simple scenarios in what we've done in the past with limited accuracy to very, very powerful scenarios that are easier for the user to use as well as easier for you to develop and far more accurate. And then finally, you don't even have to have a carrier phrase or that Mad Lib style. You can just say, you know what, Cortana, just recognize everything the user says and give it to me, because I know how to deal with text. We're trying to move from a world of you got to have a PhD in speech science with 20 years of experience to a problem that we've all learned about when we go to school to study computer science. It's just text parsing. From the most simplistic case of does this string contain this thing, or regular expressions, all the way up to crazy level machine learning technology, which is what we choose to use for Cortana. All right, so now we're on to the second step. We've gone over the first step. You have to create your voice command definitions. Now, upon application first launch, you need to register them. Very easy, just a couple lines of code. In the Silverlight example, again, carry forward your investment. 2 lines. 1 URI points to the file that you include into your package, and then you call install command sets from file async. Or if you're building a new application, a runtime application running on Windows Phone 8 at the moment, 3 lines of code. Oh my God, it's so much harder. URI, you wrap it up with a storage file, and you pass that to install command sets from storage file async. That's it. So you've got step number 1. Done, you've got your voice command. Step number 2, you've registered it. And now step number 3, I'm going to have Avery come up. He's our expert on the actual interactions once you're in the application and the dynamic programming model that we have for filling those out.
Thank you.
Yep.
What do I push to?
that one goes next.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Avery Bishop. I have seen some familiar faces out here. It's good to be back at Build. So I'm going to talk about that third step, handling voice command activation in your app. What do you do when your app was activated by voice commands? First for Silverlight apps, and then for Windows runtime apps. So for a Silverlight app, you've defined your voice command definition file. You've authored that, and it has a collection of commands and targets, right? And when the user says the app name and a command, the system recognizes that command, the app name and that command, and launches the app at the page corresponding to that target. So you go straight to the page that the user specified through the command. Very simple. And then, of course, when you get to the page, it's your job to include code to handle that voice command, to map that user's intent, as indicated by the voice command, into an action. So let's look at an example of how to do that. There we go. Here's the code. The first thing you'll notice is that you handle that activation by voice command in the unnavigated to override. And that's where you put this code to handle activation by voice command in a Silverlight app. And you'll also note that everything you need to handle activation by voice command is in this query string collection on the navigation context class. For example, as you see there at the top, there's the reco text, recognized text, the whole utterance that the user said as given by the reco key. There's also the voice command name itself. So in this case, there were two commands. There was an LP command and find text commands in the voice command definition file that we just looked at. And there may be others depending on the structure of your voice command definition file. For example, if you have those phrase topics that Rob mentioned that basically are recognized in the cloud, then they'll also be available in that query string collection. And you can dig those out and make use of those to map the user's intent into an action. So here's how you do it. You switch on the voice command name and decide how to handle it depending on what the voice command was. Very simple. Notice that I also stored the phrase topic text, what came after MSDN, in this search terms string variable, and I'm handing that off to this method to take an action based on the voice command. Okay, so now that's Silverlight. Now we're going to look at the Windows runtime example as well. And in this case, it's a little more complicated. There's an extra step involved, but it also gives you some extra flexibility in how you handle voice commands in your application. First of all, again, you've got a voice command definition file with the commands and the targets. And the first thing the system does when it recognizes the app name and the command is it passes that information to your app in the app class. And you put your code in the app class to detect what the voice command was, and then you decide what page to navigate to. And we'll see an example of that. And as before, you'll want to put code in the XAML code behind to handle the voice activation itself, to map that voice command into an action. So here's an example. This is the code in your app class. In this case, it's in the onActivated override in that class. So let's look at that. The first thing you'll note is that the activation args object has a kind property on it. You check that, and if that's equal to the voice command value of this activation kind enum, then you know you were activated by voice commands. If not, you can just ignore it and do whatever else you would have done. But if you were activated by voice commands, that's where you decide what page to navigate to. So, and the other thing to note is if you were activated by voice commands, then that activation args object is actually an instance of this new strongly typed object, the voice activated event args object. So cast that activation args object to the VC args object, and you can use that to decide how to handle. First of all, the first step, of course, is to decide what page to navigate to, and then once you get to the app, to handle the voice command. So let's look at that. Oh, the other thing I wanted to point out is that voice command activated event args has the information you need to know where to navigate to. So you can dig out the voice command name itself and other parameters if you need them as well. So we're going to switch on the voice command name. If I can get the... Oh, I guess, did I go too far? Anyway, okay, so switching on the voice command name, it's one of two commands, and I'm going to choose the page to navigate depending on which command it was. So that first parameter in the navigate method is just an object corresponding to the XAML page. The one that's of interest to us is that second parameter. It's a generic object. It's typed as a generic object. You can pass anything in there, including just an empty string. But we recommend, in this case, that you pass the result object on that voice command event args object, because that is another strongly typed speech recognition result object, and you can use that to handle the voice command in your XAML page. So let's look at what happens in that case. So now I'm going to look at a couple of examples of both of those pages, the findtext.xaml and the nlpcommand.xaml, and what you can do to handle voice commands. And there are lots of things you could do. Some of them are universal. Every app should do them. Some of them are going to depend on the design of your app. For example, if you have phrase topics or phrase lists, you'll do one thing. If you don't, you'll do another. But there are some universals, and there's a lot of content here, so I'm not going to do everything on every page, but you'll get a feeling for the kinds of things you'll want to do. So there we go. Again, you're on the page. We're on the findtext XAML code behind, and in your onNavigated_to override, the first thing you'll want to do is decide, was I launched by voice commands? The way to do that, recall that we passed the result object as the second parameter in the navigate call. Well, now you can access that and check it. If when you cast that to a speech recognition result object, if it's not null, that means you were launched by voice commands. That's the way to tell. Is that parameter actually a speech recognition result object? And if it's not null, then you were launched by voice commands. So, and in that case, then that result object, again, has everything you need to know to handle voice commands in your app. It has the text, the actual text that the user said, the whole utterance. It has other properties that are in the semantics collection, and I've saved that away in a separate variable to make it easier to visualize. And it has the voice command name itself as well. So in the case that we're talking about now, findtext, the user said something like MSDN search for Windows Phone voice commands. So in that case, everything after search for corresponds to that phrase topic, which is given by that key that you specified in the voice command definition file, dictated search terms, and that's available in that semantic collection that I mentioned earlier. So you can handle that using some kind of NLP processing, which we'll see in a minute, or you should also handle the case where the user simply said MSDN search or MSDN find, where there are no search terms. There we go. Okay, now we're going to look at another example, the other page, NLP command page. And in this case, the command is going to be of the form, the utterance is going to be of the form MSDN I'd like to know more about Windows Phone voice commands. Neither of the keywords find or search is in there. It's just free text after MSDN. But in this case, we're also going to consider the case where the command may have been typed rather than spoken. We'll see how to handle that. So again, you put that code in the onNavigated to override. You get that speech recognition result object. Check for null. I didn't show it in this case because you're all smart people, and I'm sure you figured that out. You better check for null before you try to access it. And then in this case, we're going to look at the command mode property on that semantic collection. And it'll tell us whether the app was launched by text or by voice. And in the case it was launched by voice, then you can feel free to speak back to the user to clarify, to ask for more information, to confirm. If it was launched by text, and you can see the values there, command mode is equal to voice or equal to text. In the case it was launched by text, then you'll want to display it on the phone as opposed to speaking back to them to honor their preference, so you don't embarrass them in an important meeting as Rob has done before. I mean, sorry. Only that one time. And now we've talked a lot about NLP, natural language processing, right? We talked a lot about it in the keynotes this morning. We've talked about it in this talk today. Some of you might be thinking, gee, that's easier said than done. How do I do that? Well, Rob's going to give us one idea of how to do that. There are lots of ways to do it, but he's going to give us an example of how to handle that.
Thank you, Avery. All right, so natural language understanding or natural language parsing. How do you deal with that? There are a bunch of different methods that you could perform. Probably the easiest one to convey the message here is thinking about just string-based manipulation or string-based text searching. So did it contain the word go to or go to one word, because those are both valid in the English language, as you know. Find, search, show me, all of those things. If that was a verb that we found in the phrase, we may also want to then look and say, okay, we're gonna navigate someplace. We're gonna try to find a particular website or something like that. And if you then said, the user also said Windows Phone Dev Center, for example, we'll set the URL. And then later on in the code, we'll actually navigate to that particular place. And this is done in a sort of ladder logic order where you take the least ambiguous possibility and then all the way down to the most ambiguous. I really am not quite sure. It's like large text collection kind of thing. And so this is the least ambiguous. Then you may look at this. Well, how about if the user just said, I want to learn how to something, something. Or, MSDN, I sure would like to learn how to. There's a bunch of words that come before. It's just very simple text parsing. Pick it off, and then say the action's find, and then pick out the particular search terms. Now, these are very generic approaches, but it turns out that if you get your application running in this fashion, then you can test it with users, you can test it with your friends and colleagues, you can start to see where the holes may pop in, and you may be able to fix it just by changing these sort of ladder rules. Or you may have to go to a more advanced technique, regular expressions or something else. And then this most ambiguous case, if we couldn't figure it out, my app, probably the best thing it could do would be just to search for you. Right? And that's, in fact, what Cortana does. If you ask Cortana, how tall is Britney Spears, it's going to tell you. If you ask Cortana, how do I build a nuclear fission device, it doesn't know that yet. Like in a few hundred years, it'll know the answer to that question, but not yet. So the best thing we can do is to do a Bing search. So we're going to do a Bing search. The user's at least closer to what they're doing. Same is true for your application. So with that, because I'm going to try to speed ahead, I'm just going to go over these real fast, and then we can get into having Paul come up, and he can tell you what his experience was actually doing this himself. You may want to continue the conversation once the application launches. That might be because there's ambiguity in the request. Maybe they just said MSDN search. Maybe they wanted to go to a place and there are 5 of them and you need to figure it out. But you probably only want to do that by voice if you were activated by voice. Have we drilled that home yet? Okay. Please, please, please. So let's take a look at what that code looks like. We're going to do this really quickly. It's very simple. Carrying on in the Silverlight model here, if you've got an investment there, new up a synthesizer speak, 2 lines. I know it's 1 more line than console, right line, but it's not much more. Then if you want to do a recognition, it's a couple lines of code again. You create the recognizer UI object. You add a grammar to it from these predefined types, web search or dictation or something like that. And then you actually do the recognition. It comes back. There it is in a strongly typed result object. That is in a Silverlight application. If you were in a not a Silverlight application, and you were doing a universal app or a Windows runtime app, it's a little bit different. Speech synthesis is a little bit more complicated, but it also is more powerful. So in this particular case, you'll have a media element perhaps in your XML, and that's going to specify how it's going to play, autoplay. And then you're going to 3 lines of code. I know it's not 2, but it's 3. Create the synthesizer, hook up the, say what it is, what you want to speak to get that into a synthesis stream, and then play that on the audio player. Now, the advantage here is that this new capability also allows you to do things like create, WAV file type objects and cache them away and play them back later if you want, something you wouldn't be able to do with the older API on Silverlight. All right, so recognition when you're in an application, very, very similar again. We made sure that when you're thinking about a universal app that you're building, we've rethought the APIs that fit with the rest of the APIs in those universal apps. And we're announcing today that that's on Windows Phone 8, so you can interact with it on Windows Phone 8 if you're building one of those universal apps. Let's take a look at that. You create a recognizer object. You have a constraint. It's very similar to this predefined grammar, but it's a little bit more expandable. We can be more dynamic with it in the future. This is akin to the hints that you saw in the VCD file, if you will. We add that, then we compile it. That's an optional step that makes it more performant, so you can do it, redo that operation later. You won't have to do anything with that. And then you call recognize with UI async. Very, very simple, strongly typed results object. This is the same kind of results object you would have been passed when you were invoked by speech as well. Same semantics, property, collection, stuff like that. You can load SRGS grammars for any of you that know what an SRGS grammar is. For those of you that don't, it's a W3C standard for speech. All right, so that was a whirlwind tour of the step 1, creating voice command definition files. Step 2, registering them. Step 3, handling them inside your application. Optionally, thinking about how you're going to parse that natural text. And then finally, thinking about how to continue the conversation. With that, I want to welcome Paul Beck from Hulu. He's a mobile software developer there. I've had the good opportunity to work with him on Hulu.
Thank you, Rob. Hey, everyone. Like Rob said, my name is Paul Beck, mobile engineer at Hulu. I don't have any pretty slides like you just saw, so just a couple of notes about how the integration went with Hulu, and just some thoughts about that. So really quick, how many of you have used Hulu? I know that Rob certainly have. Okay, a fair amount of you. So I won't have to describe the app in too much detail, but generally it acts just as you expect, right? You can browse video content. You can look at specific video content. You can certainly watch it. So what we want to enable users to do is to do all of that easily. I went back last night and looked at the Hulu mission statement, and it seemed pretty applicable. It said that Hulu's mission is to help people find and enjoy the world's premium video content when, where, and how they want it. So that fits in really well with Cortana because we can have them interact with it wherever they want, and maybe, as Rob said, queue it up so that they can watch it later or dive right into it. So when we got a chance to integrate with this early on, we saw that we could do a few things. For example, in the app right now, you can't jump right in and watch video. So with Cortana, we can say, Hulu, watch a certain piece of content, and we can immediately be watching video. There's no browsing. We can just go right in. Or for example, we can queue up a piece of content or add it to our favorites, whether that's a particular episode or just a show. And the other thing that we can do with Cortana versus the existing experience is take more complex and intents and do actions on the user's behalf that get them to where they're going for that. So that could be eventually a sort of digital assistant for video content, more complex things that the app can't do today. So I thought I'd take a step through just one of the scenarios that we implemented, just to sort of give an idea of how it works, and clearly from the other demos that you saw today, how that looks within the app, especially maintaining the backstack so that it's sort of a natural progression through the app. It can be done in a lot of different ways. I experimented with a few of them. But say I wanted to just, with the Hulu app, say, I'd like to watch Deadbeat. And so with this command, we would first go through, as you saw here, we have that all defined in the voice command definition. That would all get parsed up to us. And in our case, we opted to do more of the full NLP versus the VCD version of it. But we'll get that text, put it into the text parser, and then the result of that will be the action watch and a show name. So Deadbeat in this case. So once we get that, we can say, okay, well, the show name is Deadbeat, but I don't know whether that's real or not. So quickly pass that to a search, get the results, see if we have one or more pieces of content, and then if there is just one piece of content, do we have, is it just blank? Do we have episodes? And then if it's unambiguous, then we can take it a step further. We can go deeper, and we can actually hit our another web service to say, okay, given the show, what specific episode should we play for this user? And so then, assuming that comes back with a specific episode that we want to show, we go in and provide that feedback back to the user about why we're playing this show. Maybe it's the next episode after the one that they watched, or maybe it's just the most recent episode. Provide that either in voice, if they activated us via voice, or just in another way, and then we'll be diving right in. And another sort of interesting case is there's just watch a generic episode, which we can do some sort of intelligent processing on, or they can actually have specified watch the latest or watch the first, or they could have been more specific, and we'll just jump right in there. And if you take a step back and look at what that process looked like in the existing app, you're starting it up, you're going into search, finding a show, going through that show and finding where you left off. So we've gotten rid of numerous steps there, so that's pretty exciting. And I can talk more about the specifics there once we get into Q&A, but I'm going to wrap up quickly. In general, we're sort of just scratching the surface with the integration that we could do. It's really exciting to think about different commands that we could support, and it'll be an interesting process of finding out what do people want to say, how specific do they want to get, do they want to tell us, like, add season 6 of this show to my queue? Is that something that we want to support? So I'm looking forward to see how that goes. And generally, that's it. So with that, I'll pass it back to Rob. You gotta.
Hopefully that works. Great. Okay, so thank you for that. We have a handful of minutes left. I'm going to show some of the sort of art behind this. Like, how do you think about it from a human-human interaction model? But if there's one thing to say before we get into these, it's human to human. Think about what would happen if you had your app personified as a human being and there was a user standing in front of it talking to it, right? And if you ever have a question and it doesn't answer here in the slides, think of it like that. You'll probably get the right answer. So first, set of key design considerations. What's the user really want to do? What are they going to say? What are they going to type? And then what's going to happen as a result? You know, part of that is you should put as simple of command phrases into the voice command definition as possible. The reason is because a lot of that text is being recognized on the device, and that recognizer, although it's good, and I would love to say it's great, it's not as good as the cloud. So the more words you put in the VCD file, the more possibility there is for some error. It helps you in understanding the particular intent. That's great. But if you can do some text parsing, I'd encourage you to do some text parsing because the recognition accuracy will be better. Then handle that sophisticated language processing in some in-app text parsing. If you have lists of names of contacts or lists of things that like our cloud recognizer is not going to recognize, do please put those in there and use phrase lists or other things. But for the words you think our system will recognize, please let the cloud do that. Now, once you have specified your voice commands, what about the feedback? What's going to happen? You have to keep the user informed at all times. Just like your personal assistant wouldn't disappear, right? They'd let you know. That'd be kind of frustrating, wouldn't it? Like, poof, they're gone. So let the user know what's actually happening along the way. Let them know what's about to happen. Adapt your response to the type of request the user made. If the user made a question type request, don't have a cute phrase in front of it that's like, sure thing, blah, 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 blah. Because sure thing, they might have interpreted as a positive to the question that you've just asked. You know, like, name of app, did my friend just die? Sure thing. Something like, you know, not good. Don't do that. Be brief. Unlike me in the presentation, consider the use of every word that you have in the feedback. Don't be too verbose. There's a big cost to each word you have. Variety and repetition. Make sure that the feedback doesn't get just really grating, like over and over again. It's the same, like, you know, change it up if you can. Speak when spoken to. I've said a lot about this. It's really important. Cortana should only, you should only have Cortana or the system talk back if it's been talked to. There are some exceptions, but by and large, I think that's a good rule. Keep the user in control at all times. We had some examples of that up here, like when, you know, I went into an experience, but if there was maybe a problem, I could back up. But I'm always still several steps forward. I'm at least in the right app. I'm at least probably in the right part of the app. I may even have most of the text, if not all of it. I just might not be on the right tab. Or, you know, make sure that the user can recover. Keep them in control. And then finally, in terms of the actions, always a path forward. Don't ever leave the user in a place that they're stuck. And map that intent, and then inform the user of the outcome with some prompts while you're taking them safely to the next step. So with that, call to action. 3 steps to extend Cortana. Hopefully you know them by heart. There's cards on the thing. You know, you'll maybe hopefully dream about the 3 different steps. Define voice commands, register them, handle the activation. Scenarios for you to think about: communicating, finding stuff, remembering things for the user, or helping them defer tasks and do them later. And then modeling human-to-human communication patterns and interactions. Users will say anything they want. Think about what your app's going to do when that happens. Try to do the best thing you possibly can. If you need to clarify, clarify. And reinforce the appropriate verbs and phrases. The funny thing is sometimes you'll say, the user will say something and your prompt back will be like, verb of some form, something, something. But then you wouldn't have handled that verb in your text parsing. That's probably a bad idea. Make sure that that parroting works. So with that, here are some resources. I'm not going to leave this up on the screen too long because the cards are all supposed to be live hooked up to the slides, the QR code that's on the things on your seats there. And with that, we're going to go to Q&A. While I have the Q&A up, I'm also going to have this very important slide up here. So it is important to me, to the team, and to the Build Conference in general to make sure that feedback is adequately put into the system so that we can get better and better year after year. And if you want us, to do anything else with this, maybe you should, rate us and tell us how we did. Okay, with that, questions and answers. If you could use the microphones at the various locations, that would be very helpful. And I could have Avery and Paul come back up. That microphone?
That microphone, is it live?
It is.
Oh, is it? Okay. You named your application something long, and you had the little shortcut MSDN.
Yes.
What's to prevent you me from writing an app and making my shortcut MSDN and creating a conflict? Is there some way they're vetted? Like in a store, you can't have the same app with the same name.
Good question. You actually can't. So the question is, what happens if I make my short name something that overrides somebody else's short name or conflicts with like the word call or Cortana or yeah, so the answer is that part of the policy in terms of use of submitting an application to the store, if you use an app name that's not actually your app name, we reserve the right to remove it from the store. That's step one. Step two is if there's an actual true collision and there are two apps that are installed at the same time with the same name, Cortana's smart. She'll verify. She'll say, do you want this one or do you want this one? And you can click which one you want. Or you can say if there's any actual difference in text.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
How do you plan on handling like localization in different languages?
Good question. How do we plan on handling localization in different markets?
Yeah.
To really, yeah?
You want me to take that? Or?
Sure.
In VCD, in the voice command definition file, there are one of the top level elements is a voice command set. And that's a collection of commands. And there can be one of those per language. You can have multiple of those in the voice command definition file. You can't have two that have the same language, but you can have one of them for different, each of them have different languages.
Yep, that's right. And so today we're announcing that Cortana is available in US English. We also heard Joe talk about it's going to be available in China and in the UK later, with more languages to follow. We are a global company. It's important to support more than one language. So I'm going to only be able to handle a couple more questions, and then I'm going to go out into the hallway so that the next presenter can come up and get ready. So I'll handle the 4 of you that are standing there. Great. Go ahead.
I'm wondering, is there any way to initiate logic without launching an app to initiate logic, say, in a background task? And also if there's a way to, say, return results within the Cortana app the way the platform does?
Got it. So the question or perhaps suggestion is there any way to have logic run without the app actually launching?
Exactly.
Is there a background application, headless model supported? So in Windows Phone 8.1 today, the answer is no. That is a really good point of feedback. I appreciate it. I'll take that back to the team.
Okay. Thanks.
You bet.
Is there a way to change to add change of voice tone, or like to add it in inflection to the voice?
I understand the question. Yes. The question is, can you change how the voice sounds? The answer is yes. Not in the voice command definition file, so the feedback that there is just textual feedback. In your application, when you speak that line of code to call speak, there's also a speak as SSML. SSML is a W3C standard that we support, which stands for Speech Synthesis Markup Language. In there, you can set the rate, you can set the tone, you can have pitch contour curves. As much tuning as you want you to do, go for it in SSML.
Will this work with the universal apps and any plans for hands-free operation of it?
Good question. So there were 2. Will this work with universal apps, and is there any plans for hands-free use? First question, yes, it does work with universal apps that are run on Windows Phone 8.1, right? So you are probably alluding to the fact is, hey, you guys going to announce if this is going to run on some other device that we're not here to announce yet today? We're here to talk about Windows Phone 8.1. We did make sure that the APIs are in line with the universal app model so that if we were to make a decision in the future to do something like that, we're set up for success. And the second question, hands-free use, depends upon your definition of hands-free. If you mean keyword wake up, like Xbox turn on or something like that, we don't have that in the product today. If you're thinking about it from in your car with a Bluetooth kit, you can use Cortana hands-free without ever touching anything other than maybe getting it to be invoked. And the same is true with your application. That is a change for Windows 8.1. In Windows Phone 8, you were unable to use the Bluetooth kit from within your application. So if you tried to speak out or you were trying to receive text in from speech, it would not work with the Bluetooth kits. We do have that fixed. It does work perfectly. So you could, if you're an app like WhatsApp or something like that, you could do the full text messaging type of scenario just like we do for SMS with your app.
Thank you.
Yep. Last question, then I'm going to go out in the hall.
Do you define goals for repeatability and quality measures, success rate?
Good question. So the question is, do you define quality metrics for success, accuracy, things of that nature? We certainly do that internally in our system. So like how we vet the overall speech recognition platform. And for our first-party features, we do that. We do set metrics about task completion, and we measure that with telemetry data on the back end. We transcribe every single thing that's ever said to the system, and then we run through different scenarios to test new improvements to the system. So the question might have been, should you all do that? And I would suggest that you think about, from an instrumentation perspective, like getting that text back. You know, as Paul said, it'd be great to know if the user is going to say, Hulu, add the 4th season, 3rd episode of this. But they probably won't say that. But if you have telemetry, you'll know if they say that.
Thank you.
All right. Sorry for the rush. I will be out in the hallway if any of you have any questions. Otherwise, thank you for coming.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot.